What's up everyone? Alex here. I want you to help me settle an age-old question here. How would you define a JRPG? Is a JRPG only made in Japan? If so, why is Chinese food made in America still called Chinese food? Such are the silly questions that we're forced to ask ourselves as Steam and many others like it let us categorize, classify, and mark games with a million different genre descriptors, to the point that things just stopped making sense. So I said, screw that, and I started building my own taxonomy of RPGs, from Western to Japanese, complete with its own unique branches and considerations. And you even helped with that by answering my post in the community tab. And while I'm still working on this classification, I thought it'd be fun to share with you 10 of my favorite RPG subgenres, and more importantly, the games that I love that belong to each. Let's begin. Number 10. Real-time with pause. This first genre should clue you in that all of the games featured here are categorized based on a shared approach to its gameplay, and BioWare's signature style of combining real-time action with the ability to pause allowed for a unique playstyle that blended the frantic nature of action games with the kind of strategic thinking afforded by turn-based RPGs. It was such a hit, in fact, that it not only led to the popularity and critical praise of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, but it also allowed players to make their own Dungeons & Dragons campaigns and Neverwinter Nights, and was even used when we traveled to a galaxy far, far away in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. But this style of gameplay wasn't just found in BioWare titles, as Squaresoft also experimented with this style of gameplay all the way to the mid-2000s. As such, my favorite games in this genre are Dragon Age Origins, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, as well as Vagrant Story and Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age. Number 9. Farming. The most prevalent farming RPGs are Japanese in origin, but the genre has slowly but steadily evolved as each developer starts focusing on improving aspects that have often been ignored. Take that of a deeply involving story that would often take you from one town to the next in other RPGs, where you meet casts of characters that aren't just cookie-cutter versions of other NPCs you meet along the way, whose tales can sometimes bring joy and sadness depending on the context. This is why my absolute favorite farming RPG has to be Harvestella, because even though it has farming and crafting elements, which are staples of this genre, a huge effort has been made to deliver a narrative experience that no one's ever attempted in this style of game. Will we see more farming RPGs put more emphasis on their main narratives moving forward? Time will tell. But for now, know that I absolutely put Harvestella above everything else in the genre because of the ways it blended that style of gameplay with the drama that only the best RPG stories can earnestly deliver. Number 8. Shooter Western RPGs. You'd think that combining the fast-paced action of shooters with RPGs is a no-brainer, but publishers back in the day saw this as a huge risk. Some of them even said that RPGs were just too niche, that no one would ever want to buy something like that. It wasn't until the popularity of BioWare's Mass Effect series that publishers saw the value of both genres combined, further evolving this style of action RPG to a unique niche within a niche that's brought us some delightful memories and truly epic moments. As such, my favorites would have to be the Mass Effect series, yes, including Andromeda, as well as Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, a fantastic looter shooter, as well as Destiny 2, which has some of the best feeling shooting I've ever played on a controller ever. Number 7. Tactical RPGs. There's been much debate as to what distinguishes a tactical RPG from a traditional Western RPG, so I want to clarify it here. Traditional Western RPGs, while featuring positional combat like tactical RPGs, allow you to travel across a large map, complete with towns, dungeons, caves, etc., with battles scattered about. Tactical RPGs, on the other hand, have manicured battlefields that vary greatly in their designs, where combat, and only combat, is held. These battlefields aren't connected to a larger map, and are specifically designed for combat. Most traditional turn-based fans often balk at the idea of spending more than 20 minutes on a single battle in tactical RPGs, but I want you to consider that a single tactical RPG battle takes almost the same time, and in some cases, less time, than clearing an entire dungeon run in a traditional turn-based RPG. I have a slew of favorites in this genre thanks to my recent rediscovery of it, with Triangle Strategy leading the pack, which contains an epic story and a streamlined system built for traditional turn-based RPG fans who want to try this genre out, as well as Final Fantasy Tactics, Valkyria Chronicles, and for Western representation, XCOM. Yes, XCOM is a tactical RPG, and a very deep one at that. Number 6. Action roguelikes. Some of you have said in the comments that roguelikes aren't RPGs, but its build-based nature is actually a more streamlined version of the loot systems found in RPGs like Diablo, allowing you to customize your builds directly rather than relying on random rolls in the gear that you pick up. I'm specifically highlighting action roguelikes here, because this genre of action RPGs have not only increased in popularity, but has also shown promising innovations in both gameplay and storytelling. My favorites are easily Vampire Survivor and Hades 1 and 2, with the latter showcasing some of the most innovative narrative designs in games in recent memory. Dying in games has never been more meaningful, and story-heavy. Number 5. Real-time role-based RPGs. I had a really difficult time coming up with this one. When writing this script, I sat down and thought about how Xenoblade Chronicles was very similar to many MMORPGs out there. And yet, because it lacked the important online component that makes it an MMO, it would be wrong to label it an MMORPG. As such, I settled with lumping games like Xenoblade Chronicles and MMORPGs under the label real-time role-based RPGs. And yes, I'm quite aware that it's not the sexiest name. This gameplay is defined by strong real-time components that are not as fast-paced as action games, with characters whose role-specific abilities are often governed by cooldowns, has auto-attack functionality, and features enemies roaming a vast field that's fun to explore. As many of you surmise, the Xenoblade Chronicles series falls into this category easily, but I'd be remiss not to mention my favorite MMORPG, Final Fantasy XIV. Number 4. Action JRPG. Both Western and Japanese styles of action RPGs have different flavors, with the former preferring RPGs with shooter and isometric dungeon crawler gameplay, and the latter preferring a relatively friendly hack-and-slash type gameplay. This can act as both an umbrella term and its own genre, but for the purposes of this video, I'm using it to describe traditional action JRPGs like Ys and the Tales series. So it's no surprise then that my favorites would have to be Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana, Tales of Arise, Scarlet Nexus, the Final Fantasy VII Remake series, and yes, it does count, the Yakuza series. Number 3. Souls-likes. I labored for a long time where to put Souls-likes in my taxonomy, and even read through everyone's arguments about one or the other. But what I've ultimately settled on is that Souls-likes are a subgenre of JRPGs, because while its setting does look Western-inspired, its creator admits that the genre was purely inspired by Japanese media, namely Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, Wizardry, and the manga series Berserk, especially the latter's oppressive nature and the weight of its combat due to Guts' massive bastard sword. These two qualities have come to define the genre more than anything else. And Souls-likes don't necessarily have to have stamina-based combat to feel like one. Another Crab's Treasure is a good example of this, as much like most Souls-likes, you gotta commit to your every move, as it can lead you open to attack if you're a button masher. My favorites in the genre include Elden Ring, and two examples of Souls-likes that don't have stamina gauges, Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, and another Crab's Treasure. Number 2. Monster taming JRPGs. This subgenre really caught me by surprise while compiling this list, as I lumped this with other turn-based JRPGs, but after careful consideration, I just had to separate it. While most monster taming JRPGs are in fact turn-based, the specificity in which these games require you to build a party filled with different monsters or demons separates the genre from your typical turn-based JRPG. The way these games ask you to recruit, combine, and power up your monsters and demons is what helps further define the genre, making it one of the most popular subgenres of RPGs to date. And it's no surprise that this is up there for me, especially with games like Persona 4 Golden, Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin, and Pokemon Legends Arceus being some of my all-time favorites in the genre. Number 1. Traditional turn-based JRPGs. I could have probably called this a myriad of names, with some mentioning classes and jobs for one. But I thought that the easiest way to describe the games in the genre is traditional turn-based JRPGs. Simply put, the quote-unquote traditional moniker specifically talks about how close each game's mechanics are to the classics, allowing for a flexibility in presentation that can be modernized. I personally believe that games in this genre are quite possibly the easiest RPGs to recommend to people, as they're generally not as complex or complicated as any of the other genres on this list. But keep in mind that that doesn't mean that these games don't have a lot of depth either. And yet, despite its traditional nature, there's still a lot of ways that this genre can evolve, serving as a great basis for many future innovations in JRPGs. My favorites in this genre are numerous, but the ones that I absolutely love are Octopath Traveler 2, Final Fantasy VI, Dragon Quest XI, and Fantasian, which is finally coming out on consoles and PC sometime in the future. Now that you've reached this part of the video, I want you to sound off on what games you'd pick for each of the subgenres I mentioned here. Post your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. Also, if you wanted to get into tactical RPGs, I made a guide that serves as a great foundation for beginners and veteran turn-based RPG fans that walks you through what to expect in the genre, as well as some great recommendations on what games to start with. I've posted a link to that video on screen right here, right now, so please check it out. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.